And we are live. How many of these Facebook Lives start with someone saying, "And we're live"? It's a way of just acknowledging that the little red button has gone on that said that we are connected.
And I think, given the theme of tonight's discussion, it's not a bad thing just to announce it because
Yeah.
because with all that's swirling about us, I know sometimes I question whether I'm live. So I appreciate the information.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the last several of these, we've always begun with a little bit of chat, a little bit of banter, but you and I can kind of metabolize the year in terms of the headlines for a little bit as people are showing up, and then we're going to, as you come, it would be great to know where you are in the world. We always love to know which time zones are showing up. So you post comments and they will find us. Yeah, I've seen a number of memes that are making comments along the lines of like, showing January 6th and then saying, "Well played, December 20th or December 31st, well played," or like December 45th.
Right.
Yeah.
Some folks just saying, I refuse to say it's the new year. It is not the new year. We're still in 2020.
Right.
And It was just December 37th or whatever that was.
Right. Yeah, well, and for all intents and purposes, the point of this event this evening is to mark the year. We are going to end 2020 and begin 2021 with truly a ritual. We have a ritual planned for you, centered around storytelling that will be, I'm really excited about it. So Panama was first. Panama showed up first, followed by Idaho-Washington border. I crossed that border in the northern part, came down through Libby, I want to say, and then crossed over into Coeur d'Alene, maybe. Love for Idaho-Washington border to chime in on maybe if I'm remembering right. This was 30 years ago. So Maryland is here. Hello, Leah. I didn't know you were in Georgia. Oh, and Atlanta. I always put her in the woods. South Carolina is here. My parents are in South Carolina. It's been a big year for South Carolina. Hello, Wisconsin. And we are streaming live, meanwhile, in YouTube as well. So some of the, actually everybody who's been sharing has been sharing from Facebook, but I do know that we have some YouTube folk that are showing up as well. Okay, there's some woods in Metro Atlanta. Fair enough. I've been to some of those woods, actually. There's a beautiful park. I think it's on the eastern side that I wandered around in, me and the boys, in one of our treks back and forth between where you are and where I am.
You've covered some tracks there, David, in your day.
But tell you what, pandemic, we're still, a year ago, we're still innocent. Still like hearing the news in far off places, but nothing impacting our lives here in the States, at least initially, or so we thought. And then what a remarkable year on that front. What a remarkable year on the politics front. Oh my word, just full of surprises. And what a remarkable year once the pandemic kicked in, of protest. We forget, the whole summer of protest, and it was very active here in Austin, and then all of the personal things that we've all been through, and the fires and the natural disasters. That was all in 1 year. That was all in 1 year. And I'm focused on the things happening in the States. I mean, there was plenty happening. Just think of Australia's year. And I feel like we can start to get into the meat and potatoes. You feel comfortable with that, Meredith?
Yes, welcome all who are here now, and to those of you watching a recording. We're just very glad to have this opportunity to breathe some air into the contracted corners of 2020.
Yes, truly. So David here in Austin, Texas, and way over there is Meredith up in Burlington. We do know that there are people coming for the first time to one of these. These are monthly. We hold a big free webinar, mini workshop. Takes about an hour, and today's is going to be really, really powerful, I think. I say free because we also do workshops and courses and tutorials and lots of interactive stuff over at Story Steps Education, in particular in the community of adults that have come. A lot of them have come over from Sparkle, just like many of you are coming over from Sparkle Stories. And the big difference that we make is that at Sparkle Stories is the library. That's where all the stories are. And over at Story Steps Education, though we do have some stories, this is the school. This is where we're learning how to do it. David Sewell McCann's been doing that for years over at Sparkle Stories. Well, there's actually a practice associated with that. And Meredith and I were elementary school teachers together and colleagues. And then we've been developing this for quite some time in a bunch of different forms and have really found our home in Story Steps Education. So we encourage all of you to come on over. What is the actual URL, Meredith?
It's a Teachable, Story Steps Education at teachable.com.
At teachable.com. We found a home in Teachable. It really works well for us. And we also, the reason why this is happening behind me is we teach classes to children. Actually, that's probably the lion's share is Tail Spinners, which is a storytelling class that we teach kids. This one and this one's all sold out, but the next one, Silly Edition, is open for enrollment. And we have writing classes, which are very different than most writing classes. They come out of storytelling and from the heart, and you can learn all of that over at Story Steps. So stories are at the center of what we do. We have a 4-step process that we use, which is why it's called Story Steps. And we have something that Meredith's been working on for a good long while, which is this process of storying, telling stories, really seeing the stories of our lives, recognizing the ones that may be out of date, maybe are no longer serving us, maybe are actually getting in our way, unstorying those, and we'll do some of that tonight, and then making room for a new story. So that's a big part of tonight, is first of all, identifying something big, and we'll talk about elephants in a moment, shrinking that elephant in the amount of space that it's taking, and then recognizing that we have some agency in how these different characters exist. So we say this all the time. The world is made of stories. Our identities are made of stories. And I'm not being metaphorical. It's really how we see the world. When we name something, it's in context of a story. It means something in particular. We don't just say gobbledygook every time we see something that has no context. That context is a story. And our part in that grand story is our master story. So we have a master story, which is our identity, built of biography, built of stories passed down to us, built of the stories that we consume. Our year has a story to it. 2020 has a story to it. And it's more complicated than we think, which is what we're going to be working on. It's got a lot of headlines, but we're really going to go into what was our story of 2020. And in order to do that, we have to take up a central tenet of good storytelling, and that's we need to tell the truth. So this can confuse people sometimes when I talk about telling the truth and when Meredith talks about telling the truth, because sometimes what we're saying is fanciful and full of myth and full of impossible things. But underneath it is something deeply true. It's often connected to how we feel. And how we feel is true. And the language of the heart is storytelling. So that metaphoric language we use because being accurate sometimes just doesn't get there. So we tell a story about our inner experience, about what's happening inside. And we use often just one single word stories. So we're going to ask you in this, and this is all in your own space where you are, none of this will be public, to actually give this a shot and to be truly honest with yourself, to really take this practice up. So there's a story that, we write stories for adults as well. Adults need stories. And the most recent one that has been published over at Story Steps is about finding your elephant. It's about a young woman named Jessica who has a talent of actually seeing the metaphor in what people are saying when they're telling stories and recognizing that, and it comes in the form of animals, that they keep sort of the animals that show up that represent what their stories keep avoiding things. We all do this, especially when we're talking to strangers. There's a certain sensitive thing that we don't want to talk about. That's what pardon me for that loud noise. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to find the elephant in the room. And so I've got a exercise that will require some drawing. So if you can, take a moment and go get some paper, ideally some blank paper, and something to write with. I've got colored pencils, but a pen, pencil, something like that. Any of that will be fine. So get yourself some materials. And once again, I'm going to repeat our intention for the webinar tonight. I'll be leading the front part of this, and Meredith will be taking up the second part of this. We're going to look at the year that we just experienced, and we're actually going to identify it as like we're ending that year. You may have ended it in December 31st. You might be ending it tonight. And we're going to identify the elephant in the room of the year, and we're going to deal with that so that we don't take the same elephant into 2021. Thing about an elephant is that even though it's big, people don't want to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to identify that story. Okay, so with your blank sheet of paper, what I would like you to do is draw, poorly if you can, a series of animals. And the animals will mostly be along, you can do it this way if you'd like, along here. Like make this the ground. Make a ground and then make a bunch of animals on the ground of different sizes. But the biggest animal, the one that's taking up the most space behind all of those animals, is an elephant. So you can draw it Little Prince style, just the goofiest, poorly drawn elephant of your life that you've ever seen. But there can be a cat, there can be a dog, there can be a hippopotamus, there can be an ostrich, there can be whatever, just a bunch of animals that you want to draw. Maybe they mean something to you, that's fine. But do, 4, 5, 6 maybe, but one of them takes up the most space, and that's the elephant. So let's take a moment to do that. Woo, I went to art school and this is a mess. If you suddenly are inspired to do a particular animal, just go for it, even if you can't really draw it. For some reason, I just drew a shark lying there. just to give you an idea of the kind of thing that I was envisioning, but yours might look different, is a bunch of animals. There's the shark. There's an ostrich. There's a kind of wolfy dog. Here's a little kitty. But taking up the most space in there is the elephant. That's key.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like your elephant.
Got an elephant. I've got a dog. There's the dog. I've got a cat.
Nice.
Cat, pig, mouse, bird, ant.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Okay, so you can do this on the back, or you can do it on a separate page. What you're going to do is you're going to think about your year. Think about your year. And I wouldn't just focus on the headlines. Yes, there was a pandemic, and that was a big deal. Yes, politics. Yes, fires. Yes, protests. Yes, all of those things. But include in that anything that uniquely is going on for you, your family, your work, what have you. So really get granular. And on that sheet of paper, list out the things that took space in your life, that took up room in your psychic space, in your head space, in your heart space. Really go back through the year and list it all out.
I'm going to add to the list here, David, also schooling. That was just so big for
Oh, yeah.
our parents, and along with all the headlines, just so much.
Right. Managing school, all of it. And, you know, if there are big things that you're remembering that happened this year that I'm not mentioning, you're welcome to put it in the comments and help jar people's memory around that. So all the big things that we talked about was definitely a part of it.
Jobs, school, just all of it. My gosh. Yeah.
So, and as few words, I mean, ideally, like, see if you can label it with one word.
And David, did I hear you say a separate piece of paper or on this piece of paper?
Well, we're just going to make the list on a separate sheet of paper. This is the inventory, and we're going to do something with a few of those words, but we want to get them all out there. It might have been relationship stuff this year, might have been illness or injury this year, financial.
Mm-hmm.
Think back of certain dates, think about around your birthday, think about, you know, summertime, travel, not travel. Try to remember, it's such a big year. Feels like just ages within that year. Like, I forget, but my oldest son graduated from high school. It's just now occurring to me. Great. A few more. Jot those down. And then in this next section, you're really going to see the truth around what really took up space for you this year. So it may very well have been your concern about the pandemic. It may very well, this may have been a very busy year for you politically. What we want to notice is the way in which everything is moving around something. What are all of the concerns moving around and adjusting themselves to? What's the elephant in the room? Because we're going to label the animals here. You're going to pick your top 5 or 6, and the number 1 of that list right there, and I know mine, you're going to write on your elephant. And then write the other ones on your animals, just to give you a sense of what were the big ones that really took up your year.
And another way to really take the inventory of your list is not only the ones that took up the space as you're looking at the physical space on the paper, but actually where's the sensory trigger? Where's the emotion? As you're looking at all of your words, which one grabs you? That's the one that's calling on you to be the elephant for now. It could change, but for now.
And to be clear, that it isn't necessarily a negative thing. It's just what really took up the space this year. And do you want to bring that same dynamic into 2021? I loved my elephant, but it's exhausting. Okay. All right, very good. So give it a shot. You can always do this again and change your elephant. I've identified mine. Meredith, have you identified yours? Okay, great. So now we're going to do something with this. We're going to recognize that your elephant might have surprised you, what you've decided is your elephant. It may also have made you upset because maybe this has been the elephant in your life for a long time now. Something that maybe held over for other years, what have you. Maybe it's something that you pictured as a super positive, really good news, but realizing it's actually taking up a lot of space so that other parts of your life can't necessarily have that room to thrive, what have you. You may be experiencing a lot around that, but we're going to see the elephant as a character. We're going to actually really see its role in your master story. So imagine your master story starts with stories that your family has been telling about your family's identity, you know, where you come from, etc., all of those things. Stories in your parents, However you came to the planet, um, you arrived with stories intact, and then your biography starts. And it's in a certain part of the world. There's a certain group of people around you. You're interacting with them. You have a childhood. Just note all the images that are coming up as you think about your childhood, going through schooling, whatever that looked like, leaving home, whatever that looked like, becoming an adult, whatever your understanding, whatever your story is around being an adult, work, relationship, marriage if you have, children if you have. That whole story and all the stories that are wrapped up into that coming to this point right now with us being together on this. So that's the whole story. Now look at your elephant and just mark psychically, you can also write it down, where did that come in? When in your life did this elephant become an elephant? I know exactly when mine did. How long has it been an elephant? And then think about how it has actually affected you. In a moment, Meredith is going to talk about the elephant that, we don't all see elephants the same way. Think about the different aspects of this elephant. What are the positive things? What are the negative things? Specific ways in which it has impacted your life. Really try to see around all the different edges of it. And you can write some of this down. You can also, since we can't hear you, you can actually story it. You can actually say it out loud. I remember the elephant. I remember when it showed up on this particular date, completely changed my life. And it changed my life in these ways. And it's still changing my life. And this is who it is in my life right now. And take a little moment with that and really give it shape, really describe, appreciate the impact of the elephant before we go into the second part of this. What I like to do with things like this is to actually see my life for what it is, which is a story. I'm telling myself a story about my life, that I am this person, I grew up this way. It's all story, which is not saying that it's false, but I'm a character in a story that I'm telling myself about my life. That's just true. That's just how this works. So it's kind of fun to separate yourself out and say, David was walking along minding his business when suddenly in comes the elephant. And boy, he did not see that elephant coming. And, see it, appreciate it from the outside that way. Because I'm getting into your territory, Meredith, so I'll stop. And once you can really appreciate that elephant, now we're going to actually have some agency. And that's to you, Meredith.
Yeah. So it's brave stuff, identifying the elephant and being willing to explore it and look at it. The elephant has the power that it has really because we don't talk about it. It's there. We all know it's there. We give it power. We make it even bigger. We make it take up the whole room when we look askant. And so going face to face with the elephant can be what we avoid doing. And yet, when we right size the elephant, we see it for what it is. And then we have that agency that David has referred to. And we can then make a clear minded, open hearted response to our elephant with compassion, knowing that we all have them, rather than dancing that we do to resist the elephant. It's actually in resisting the elephant that we struggle. And what we're proposing tonight is not to say that the year hasn't been fraught with tremendous surprise and anguish and challenge and dispute. But what we can do is look at our response to it all and look at how what is happening out there in the world triggers whatever was brought up in our own master story. And the elephant is that part of the master story, which one could even say is our core story. There's this master story, which is the full composite of our biography, and yet we each carry a pain point or something, or many, but I'm just referring to a place right now that we're going to bring our focus in a safe way that gets triggered differently for me than it's going to be for David or any of you now who are with us or who are watching. So it's not to dispute what's happening out there. It's just to say that what's happening out there is being interpreted through our own master story, through our own viewpoint. The story then we add to it and then either reify or make even stronger. We can form a contraction around that story. So I'm going to do my best to play with the technology right now. This is a relatively new streaming portal for me. So I'm going to try to screen share. And if not, then I will read a poem to you if I can't work out the screen sharing. So let's see what shows up. All right. So am I screen sharing right now, David, or no?
No.
What do I need to do to, so.
The little screen share icon below.
Yes, I see that, but I'm not sure that what I want to screen share is what is showing up. If I click share, what do you see?
There we go. I see us and I see what you want. So I'm going to add that to the stream. There you go.
Are you seeing right now The Blind Man and the Elephant by John?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to press play. It's going to take us about 2 minutes to watch this.
The Blind Man and the Elephant by John G. Sachs. It was 6 men of Indostan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, "God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall." The second, feeling of the tusk, cried, "Ho, what have we here? So very round and smooth and sharp. To me 'tis very clear, this wonder of an elephant is very like a spear." The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, thus boldly up he spake, "I see," quoth he, "the elephant is very like a snake." The fourth reached out his eager hand, and felt about the knee. "What most this wondrous beast is like is very plain," quoth he, "'tis clear enough, the elephant is very like a tree." The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, "E'en the blindest man can tell what this resembles most. Deny the fact who can? This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan." The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, "I see," quoth he, "the elephant is very like a rope." And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. Moral. So oft in theologic wars, the dispute.
I'll stop here with the moral. Point being that We each have our portion of our own elephant or the global elephant. And it's really a matter then of our story that we tell about the elephant, our interpretation of it, what we add on to the elephant that gives it meaning. And so this is the master story we've created, the core story that perhaps is always ever present as a theme in various components of our master story. And now we take the next step of what we call unstorying, where we loosen our identification, which from this narrative that we've come to identify as part of who we are and our experience. And so in previous tutorials that we have done together, I have shared with you these components of storying and what gives a story meaning, where we have the visual component or the image, we have the words that we hear that actually give it meaning, or we have some kind of sensory experience. And we actually need all three of those components together to really have a visceral identification with a story that we give meaning to, where we call, in David has referred to as having narrative density. It actually has a magnetism to it. It draws us in. And so what we're going to do is now bring your elephant forward, very gently, looking at your elephant, looking at the word that's in your elephant. And we're just going to take a moment to see what is calling out strongest to you in your experience of your elephant. When you look at that elephant, when you see the word in that elephant, are you having some kind of emotional or sensory response in your body? Pleasant or un, it doesn't matter. Or are you seeing the word? Is that word that's in the elephant the trigger for you? Or is there some image? It could be of the elephant, since you're actually looking at that right now. But if you just take a distanced perspective and think, where in your life do you experience that elephant? Do you have an image of that? Do you have a picture of that? And so what we do in unstorying is we literally untether the words from the sensation, from then the image. And then what we're managing is just a word. It's just a word, or just an image, or just a physical sensation. And it's not until we add layers of putting those all together that we have our narrative density that can actually wield power over us. And so what I'm going to invite you each to do is to just sit for one quiet moment. We're just going to take in a few breaths. Hold your elephant nearby, and we're just going to listen. So the elephant is in the room. You're looking at the elephant, whatever that issue is, and there it is. Taking a few breaths, and I invite you, if it works better for you to close your eyes, please do so. If not, you can just pay soft attention to your environment. Place yourself in your environment. Take note. Here I am in space right now. I'm watching this webinar. I'm with David and Meredith. Just put yourself in the context of the present moment. And with a few breaths, with us here with you, bring your elephant into your awareness. For me, when I make contact with my elephant, what's strongest for me is a physical sensation. And I feel it, kind of a vibration in my chest coming up into my throat. Just take an inventory. Where is the strongest impulse right now? Is it in your physical body? Are you seeing the word? Are you hearing the word? Or is there some kind of memory or image? And the challenge here, it takes some practice, is to go now directly to just one of those components of your story. If it's the sensation, as is the case with me, I'm just going to go to the sensation and I'm going to tell the word and the image. I can come back to you another time. I'm not forgetting about you. But for now, my attention is on the sensation. For you, it might be the word or some kind of image. And with a few breaths, just making contact with the word or the image or the sensation. Actually going to use a different technique than we used in a previous webinar, and I'm actually going to ask you with an index finger to actually tap right on wherever that sensation is. For me, it's right here. If it's a word, see if you can tap right on the word. If you don't see the word visually, you could tap right on the word as you wrote it down on your piece of paper. You could tap here if you have some kind of experience of hearing it. If there's an image that you see or you imagine, you can tap right on the image or tap right on the elephant just as an image. And just spend a few moments tapping and breathing. And bring your attention to that place where your finger makes contact with your physical body, with the paper, with the word, with the image, just as a sensation, a word, or an image. And just keep tapping. And now just let the tapping rest. And just ask yourself now, is that sensation as strong? It's fine as if it is. There's no agenda here. This is not an effort to make it go away. This is just a tool to give you some perhaps greater capacity to make contact with the elephant. For me, there's just a little bit of a loosening of that sensation. It's still there. So with a few breaths, I've noticed it's moved a bit to my throat. I might move the tapping up here. And we don't have the time this evening to take this process through to its perhaps more fruitful end or close or resolution. But this is something that you can do on your own after this webinar is over at any time. Just ask yourself, words, image, or sensation. The tapping is actually a tool to bring you to the present moment, to take you perhaps from that propensity to add story and to Velcro it all together into a drama, but to actually give you some, perhaps it's a scaffolding to come a little bit closer to your elephant. And in so doing, we're creating space. And in creating space, what I've said before is we aerate what we narrate. And once we bring space to the story, that's when then we have room to put something else in. We re-story something that is in greater service to ourselves and perhaps in relationship with those with whom we are in contact. So we're not here tonight to make 2020 better. We're not here to make sense of it out there. But we are here tonight to give you some agency to find your elephant and make sense of it for you. And if we each were to do that, then we will respond to the outer circumstances with greater equanimity. And boy, Wouldn't that be something? A dose of equanimity amidst all of the craziness.
Mhm.
That's our invitation here this evening.
Well, I'll share my experience, not the specifics of it, but just more sort of the overarching. But use this time, those of you who are here now, if you have a particular question, because there's a bit of a lag, so you can pop that in the comments for our last few minutes. But I kind of knew what I was going to take up, Meredith, but had a very different experience than I was thinking. It's never happened to me with Unstoring that it was a word, and this time it was very much a word. That was new, and something that I wrote down, and the word was why, and it had a lot of energy to it, almost a desperation. Why? And what happened, interestingly, and the story changed around that, and the word remained. So why remained, but it was a different why. Instead of a why, it was now a why. And it was an invitation, inviting me to kind of like explore that with curiosity, not demand answers, but, this is interesting. And to be able to have that little step back as you know, the storyteller of my own life, and be like, oh, this is interesting. What I wonder where that's going. And to be able to imagine then, which is the restorying part of it, well, maybe it's heading in this direction. Maybe it could be this, where I thought it was this, but it could be this. Let me try that on for the next chapter of 2021. That would be interesting if it went like that. That sort of thing. There's room for me to actually imagine those sorts of things rather than this big, weighty, of what it was before.
When you were just speaking, David, about this relationship to the word why, there was a shift, in my interpretation, from urgency
Mm-hmm.
to possibility.
Yeah.
Curiosity. There's a curiosity there. Why, as opposed to why, damn it? You know, this sort of gripping. So there was some aeration you brought to the narration, from
Right.
more contracted gesture to some openness there. And then in following the process, you might find then, after unstoring the word why, that an image comes up or there is a sensation. And that's the dance here with unstoring, is you unstory one component, rest into that, see what comes up. So it's a process that is deserving of some time and patience, and it's ongoing.
Yeah, speaking of time and patience, we had a comment here. I too received a word, reduction. I spent all year resisting the reduction, but I am beginning to see it for the catalyst that it may be. So just even within that, the kinds of freedom and room for possibility. Another word, I experienced a desperate who. I yawned a lot, realized that who has been the core part of my identity up to this point. Felt tension release around 2020, the 2020 elephant. Thank you. Very cool.
Yeah. The word that I thought it was going to be a word, it was mask. And it went right here. And so I loosened that sensation of mask, but that word has still got some trigger for me. So I would then come into then seeing, where does that take me? Is it an image of a mask? Is the word mask? And all mask is a multi-layered interpretive. I interpret it in many different.
Right.
And for me, it has a lot to do with identity that was just mentioned here. Isolation. I mean, all of these things that are tethered with mask, right? So, and then a whole series of health issues that come up with the word mask. So that's a very narrative massively dense
Mm-hmm.
word for me and concept. So that's something I'm going to take from this and continue to aerate and unstory. It's not just a drive-by.
Right, right. And then what that character in your story or anyone's story with the use of mask or any other word, like how does a mask become an agent if there's room for that? You know, like it's essential in some forms of theater. You have to have a mask. So yeah, that I'm really taking away just this notion of being able to turn something inside out and be able to see it as a opportunity, as the sense of possibility, that room that exists there. Wonderful having you all. Lovely having some new folks. And once again, we do this once a month, and we will always advertise it. They're different, each one of them, and the one we have that we're thinking about for February will be quite different. So, I knew the elephant right away, was interested to ask when it showed up. Very specific incident 13 years ago popped in. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You just hold on to these things on a cellular level,
Mm.
and there it is. And so go gently with your elephant.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say is that when we can take apart the components, it can be a safer adventure than just, all right, elephant, it's just you and me here.
Right. Yeah. Name an elephant. Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, wonderful having you all. And we look forward to the next time. And of course, a broad invitation to come visit us over at Story Steps Education. We'd love to have you over there as well. Come check us out.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night. Good work.